This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
Finding a new job is stressful. But with Indeed, it doesn't have to be. Just fill out your Indeed profile with your skills, experience, and desired salary. The more you fill out, the better your matches will be. And hearing from hiring managers will be 2 times more likely. Relax. That's your Indeed profile sending opportunities your way. Indeed, the world can work better.
Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Cannes. This is our 5th episode in our special series on reports from the Croisette. And today I'm joined by Savina and
Maja.
Excellent. And first, could you give us your sort of full name and who you're writing for?
Who are you? Well, who am I? My name is Maja Korbeka, and I'm Polish, but I'm writing mostly about Asian cinemas, and I'm here representing a Chinese newspaper called Dajongding, which is popular cinema.
And my name is Savina Petkova. I live in London. I love being in Cannes. I'm a freelance journalist, and I'm here with a bunch of outlets, including Film Stage, Hammer to Nail, Sight and Sound, and I'm doing a piece on a video game here in the immersive competition for Mashable.
Oh, this is the first time we've talked to anyone who's even... I mean, the thing about the immersive section, they announced their prizes yesterday, and it's like, my God, you guys are still doing this? Because it seems like every year, but it doesn't seem to make any progress.
No, and also they don't need a premiere status, which I think is kind of cool. Like, that's a very non-Cannes thing to do, to invite installations and VR and games that are not world premiering here, to just give them more exposure. You know, I support it. It's cool.
Yeah, no, I'd like it. I think Venice has this sort of dedicated island that you sort of go off and it feels a little bit more developed.
That's proper stuff.
Yeah, Cannes hasn't sort of quite got.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a basement in the Carlton, but there are some good stuff. Like the one that I saw and I'm writing about is called Lily. It's an adaptation, desktop-based video game on Lady Macbeth. And it stars Zara Mir Ebrahimi, who won Best Actress for Holy Spider a couple of years ago here. So it's a reimagining of Macbeth, and she plays Lady Macbeth. And you, the player, are a hacker who is hacking her and listening to her. And it's all within the Iranian, surveillance system.
That sounds fascinating.
It's pretty cool.
Okay, great. Excellent. It's good to have another perspective on a different part of the... I met somebody yesterday who was looking for the immersive place, and I was just, I didn't know. I don't have a clue where it is. But okay, let's talk about what we've seen in this latter part of the festival as we're coming towards the close. Closes tomorrow. So what have you watched recently?
Yesterday, it was a very strong day for me. I watched Sentimental Value and Magellan, but I guess, we all watched Sentimental Value, so...
Yes, I also watched it.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
For me, it's just such a smartly written film, and especially because it also deals with cinema itself, just this whole house being a sort of cinema that we also feel very sentimental about. And I guess it really spoke to me just when it comes to the relation within a family and across generations, that there are so many things that are not spoken, but they can be only done through some sort of shared projects or just working together and kind of be willing to communicate. So that was just very, very touching, I guess.
John, how did you feel about the familial dynamics in the film?
Yeah, so basically, to give a brief synopsis of the film, we start with a family home and we sort of have an intergenerational story that goes with the house. Stellan Skarsgård is a film director and his daughter is a successful theatre actress. His daughter is played by Renata,
Reinsva?
who, of course, won the Best Actress for Worst Person in the World with the same filmmaker, Joachim Trier. And I thought the film was really good. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very clever. It was very entertaining. My only sort of slight, it's not really a criticism, it's almost sort of a slight sort of cynical observation was it was kind of tool machined for Cam. It felt like something that very much hit all the right buttons and all the right notes. And some of the bits I thought, that wouldn't happen in real life, but it would happen in a Cannes film. You know, like a film director giving his 10-year-old grandchild, irreversible DVD, that felt like that was absolutely pointed towards a Cannes audience rather than something that actually happens in real life.
It really was, but I really enjoyed that because it was such a nice touch of a little bit of a crass humor, which I don't associate with a director like Joachim Trier, who is more on the soft side, I think. But it was poking fun at that whole culture of cinephilia, I think, because the director himself, in the film, Stellan Skarsgård's character, he as a director, he was obviously revered, but also he was a little bit of an asshole, if I'm allowed to say that word on the
Absolutely.
Yeah, he kept interrupting people while they speak. He was trying to override everything. He's framed from the beginning of the film as someone who leaves the family and his wife and 2 daughters because no particular reason, but just to work. So I think it's like a fight for independence for him. It's always been a this or nothing. And I think the film was quite touching to me in the way that it obscures at first his vulnerabilities, but then as the film goes on, it peels off layer by layer. And it's not to say that there's this huge revelation. I don't think that's what this filmmaker is ever gonna go for. He works in more subtle ways, but the film did allow for a meeting of vulnerabilities between father and daughter. That's also a dynamic that I don't see explored on screen that much, to be fair.
That's beautifully put. I think that's very, very, very true. And I think it was interesting, the cameraman that he goes to, the old cameraman, they sort of say, "Oh, I'm sorry we haven't seen each other so much." And he's like, what it's like between films. You're not good at keeping in touch. And you get the feeling that he's like that with his daughter and his family as well. That if they're not the primary focus of his creative work, then they're irrelevant to him as well.
I think that the film actually grasped this very delicate feeling. When you do that, like rationally, everything seems right. For example, the different actress, she's also talented, like it might work. Then
played by Elle Fanning.
Yes, and just also involving like the different production.
Netflix.
Yes, exactly, Netflix. But then this film really grasps this feeling that you have under your skin that something is not right. Even though like rationally everything works out. But then that it won't in the end, and it will be very forced, and it will be like a very painful process instead of a healing process.
Yeah, when you're trying to run away from the thing that you're supposed to confront, life has a way of telling you that you're you should do it.
Yeah. It was interesting as well because it strikes me that there's been a series of films this festival which have all been, first of all, very powerful female performances, but also about mental health issues. And we've seen it already in Sound of Falling, we've seen it in Chronology of Water, and we've seen it in Die My Love, and Alpha to some degree as well. And all of these films take it seriously, take those notions seriously. I think this one perhaps was one of the more subtle ones because it was almost like that's slightly out of sight that you're not really given too much access to, and that's also a valid way of doing it, I think.
Yeah, definitely, and especially if you compare with another role that Renate played last year. Was it last year? In Armand?
Right,
that
yes.
Norwegian film by the granddaughter of Ingmar Bergman. That film was centered around her performance as a a mother under pressure because her son is being accused of abuse. Her, small son, maybe 6, 7 years old, something like that. And the film revolves around her having a mental breakdown, basically, and the film only banks on that. And I won the Camera d'Or, but I think it was really a tribute to Renata's performance. So it was very interesting to see her in under much more subtle direction of playing a woman that is, I think she also plays an actress in that film, Armand, as well. So a different kind of actress that is played by this actress that has a lot of range, but she doesn't take it to the limit in this role. And I think that's an even bigger skill because, she's not overdoing it, and it really helps you feel like these characters are so human. So even many of the things that could not happen in real life, I feel like these people, I can meet them,
Yeah, another sort of similarity, that sort of a pattern that emerged from the festival, was I also noticed a bit of a sort of Gina Rowlands influence, because that scene at the very beginning of the film where she's a theatre actress and she doesn't want to go on and she does everything, it becomes very comic how she's sort of choosing, excuse after excuse after excuse not to go on. Reminded me of Cassavetes' opening night.
Yes.
Yes.
So that was wonderful. Let's move on to another film that we've all seen. We've seen A Simple Accident. Is that right? Have we all seen that? Oh, no.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
You've seen that. Okay, let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about Resurrection, which I think we've seen.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Should I? Do you want me to intro Simple Accident?
Yeah, let's.
Okay. So it's the first film of Panahi that I personally see in a festival. I usually get to catch up with his films later on.
Right.
But it was the day after the premiere when I saw it. People were already saying, okay, this is probably the winner. We can see it happening. Juliette Binoche and the jury are going to lean that way. It's solid. It's critical of the regime. It should be rewarded. So I already, his reputation preceded it. But which
is a bit dangerous for as a viewer of a film.
Very true. But I was surprised by how tonally rich the film was.
Right.
It's the simple accident you see at the very beginning of the film where a family driving in a car runs over a dog and has to stop in the middle of the night to seek some help in a warehouse. And then things start evolving in a, I guess, dangerous but also absurdist way. So the tonal shifts between these dangers of getting back into, repressed memories of torture, basically. Yes. It's a bunch of people uniting after not seeing each other forever, but they've spent time together in prison, imprisoned by the Iranian regime for different reasons. And they think they've caught the person that was in charge of their torture. So the whole film is basically a back and forth of what to do with him.
Yeah, it's kind of like a moral quandary.
Exactly.
How certain do we have to be before we can take vengeance? Should we take vengeance?
Exactly. There's so many
questions.
Exactly, and the questions are asked and answered by every one of these characters again and again. So it becomes a sort of philosophical treaty of sorts that is rooted in trauma and recollection and being able to hear the testimonies of these characters. I think everyone has at least one monologue where they share their personal memories, and they are so full of anger that it seems like that's the most rewarding bit. So it becomes clear that their revenge is a different kind of revenge that is also owning up to the fact that this shouldn't have happened to them, and being able to say that in front of the abuser and the torturer felt like that was where the film really got me. In terms of film philosophy and ethics, that kind of when a film asks the questions and also provides an answer for you.
Yeah, I was interested in that because I think Iranian cinema it's sort of one of its key practices is ambivalence. You're constantly wondering how this is going to work out, and I think it's partly due to the context of the fact that it's, growing up in a totalitarian society, you're growing up in an absurdist society. So everything that happens is absurd, even suffering.
Yeah.
And here there are absurd moments which are quite comic as well.
Yeah.
They're having a full argument and they turn around and sort of have a pan across and you see the security guards staring at them.
Or the fact that, 5 people managed to fit in a tiny van, including a bride with like a huge dress with a crinoline in it. And it seems like they're all just like getting out of it one after the other. They're getting in. It's like a clown car moment per se. I didn't expect to see that in a Panahi film.
Yeah, that's an absolutely fantastic image. That's so true. I hadn't thought of that. Absolutely a perfect similarity there. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple of his films here. He's a friend of Cannes. He's a friend. He's a filmmaker, as you've already said, who's very critical of the regime, and so finds an audience here. I mean, I'm always a little bit cautious when I'm judging films that come from cultures that I don't have any real first-hand experience of.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of Iranian friends were sort of on Facebook really criticizing this film in terms of like the acting and the writing and things like that. I just can only judge what I see and what I know. And to me, it looked great, and the performances were all very convincing. I think there was a sense that each of the characters is playing a type of experience and a type of response.
Yeah, actually, I think I agree. That's a very good observation. So there was a bit of a typology going on there, an abstraction within each character rather than a fully fleshed person necessarily there.
Yeah, so this is like this is anger, this is forgiveness, this is rationality, and but overall I thought this was a great film. It's kind of interesting as well to see one of his films where he's not appearing himself as an actor, which is No Bears, and some of his previous films, some of his more recent films, he's been sort of front and center. Okay, let's move on to a film that we saw, some of us have seen, I think. This morning I saw this film, which is Resurrection, by another sort of Cannes filmmaker, Wee Bang. And what was your response?
I think it's very interesting to actually transition from Panahi to Bigan, because Iranian and Chinese cinema has a lot in common when it comes to just film festival exhibition. And most definitely Bigan is the filmmaker that was first discovered in Locarno with Kylie Blues. And then he transitioned to Cannes. And
what was his first film in Cannes? Was it
A Long Journey into the Night?
Long Journey into the Night, right.
So it was basically, 7-8 years ago. And what really made me think is that these two films they feel quite similar. I mean, it's obviously an auteur cinema, so I guess they should
yes.
Feel similar. But the world just changed a lot in these 7-8 years. And I feel that with Resurrection, Bigan is a little bit not in tune with what is happening now, just in the world, like with the zeitgeist. So maybe we can just talk a bit about the premise of the film. So it's very metaphorical, I guess.
Right.
Because the film starts with this idea of humanity in the future not being able to dream, or just kind of giving away the ability of dreaming in exchange to live longer. And the creatures who are supposed to kind of carry this
it's sort of like the people who continue to dream are sort of like the phantasmas who...
Yes, they turn into monsters.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
Yes, and basically we enter one of these monsters' dreams. And And it takes us through the whole history of cinema, I guess, till like the 1999.
Yes. So in a way, the film, it reminded me, when I was a kid, you used to be able to buy a compendium of games, that you'd buy a box and it would have drafts and chess and snake and ladders and all these in like one or two sort of things that you kept flipping over. And this felt like a compendium of film genres and film history. And it references so many films. It would take half an hour and we wouldn't be done. But films from Blade Runner to Buster Keaton to Melville's The Samurai, one of the very first, what was it called? The Water or Watered.
Yes, Lumiere Brothers.
Yes, exactly. Frankenstein.
Yes, also
gothic horror, vampire films, gangster films, Jali. You have the scene with black gloves reaching out to a girl's throat.
Also Nosferatu, then Orson Welles.
Orson Welles' Lady of Shanghai with the mirrors.
Yes.
And I'm kind of interested because I found this this for me was my palm. This was a really powerful, ambitious film. It is long. It's like it's not Lav Diaz long, but it's like just shy of 3 hours. It has a structure where we have basically a series of short films, book ended by this cinema viewing public, where the people who are watching the cinema are basically the dreamers who are going to burn out. And it's kind of the way it explains it is that people who don't dream are like candles that aren't lit, so they can live forever. But then again, in that metaphor, there is the idea of like, what's the point of a candle that you don't light? I mean,
it's just existing.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, it's like waxy coldness. Each of the stories are connected to a sense. And so there's a story at the very beginning about hearing and also the opposite of that sense. So, hearing but deafness, sight but blindness and being blindfolded, taste, touch, and they're all very different stylistically, and they're cinematically so bold. You have a massive 30-minute one-shot scene which encompasses a love affair, a change of genres, goes from gangster to vampire, and goes from day to night, goes from neon to daylight. And it just bowled me over. It just absolutely knocked me to pieces.
So definitely the narrative structure is just very elaborate.
Yes.
But then I couldn't really connect just with the characters or with the dialogues. Just the dialogues felt very, very shallow. So in a way, I couldn't really get into the film, even though it all makes sense on on level of film form. But then somehow it just seemed a bit as plaisanterie. So it's like a game. But I guess maybe that was Bigan's intention, to play with viewers.
I definitely agree that there's a ludic element of game. I totally agree. It connected with me though emotionally, and I would push against the idea that the dialogues were shallow, because I feel they were very much the whole thing is about cinema, but the idea that cinema is at risk and we're losing it and we're losing our form of imagination. And in fact, by the end of the film, people are disappearing and fading out and burning away. And I found that intensely moving. And I read a quote yesterday by David Foster Wallace in which he said, we're all struggling on this long journey toward this long, impossible journey home without realizing that the long, impossible journey is home. And that's what I sort of felt about this film, was that we're constantly seeing people in the films who are magicians or tricksters or gangsters or prisoners or scoundrels. One of the characters is called a mongrel throughout the film. And I feel that that we're all mongrels. We're all this mix of dreamer and realist. And so it really, I don't know, it kind of touched me in a way that was kind of quite visceral. And I might be just projecting my own sort of emotional sensitivity after 10 days of being in Cannes Film Festival, and I've come to the end of my tether. But and that can happen. You can sort of go home from a festival, rewatch a film, and go, "Oh no, it's not at all," you know.
It's just physically straining, also.
Well, yes, and there is I have to point out there is a quite extended scene in which there's a protracted sound of someone snoring. And it seems like the filmmaker is inviting you can go sleep. This is the moment in which we can all have a nice snooze. But then there's this line, when my dad, something like when my dad died, I missed his snoring. I missed the sound of his snoring. I found that what we miss about people are their imperfections. We don't miss their sunny smiles and their laughter, and we miss their snoring and the way they used to annoy us. Like Stellan Skarsgård in the Trio movie.
But when it comes to also the stories themselves, and just Bigan's message that we should just rethink cinema because it is dying. But then, don't you think that actually these stories were like an AI generated? Because they were actually very stereotypically trying to represent the feeling of the decade. For example, from the 1910s and 1920s, and also 1930s with just German expressionism, and then also with spy films in the 1930s, and then in the 1950s with this reconstruction of King Hu's, just these films about mysteries in a temple somewhere in China, and ghosts. And then in the 1980s, actually, it felt not like in the Chinese cinema, but rather like in American cinema. Just Jackson Lee, who plays the main role of a dreamer, who was kind of guiding us through this world. He really tries to act like Marlon Brando or like Al Pacino.
No, but I thought it was international all the way through.
Yes.
Truth. I thought, as you said, German expressionism at the beginning. I thought the Melville, those trench coats, I don't think were being worn much in China so much as they were by Humphrey Bogart.
Yes.
And Alain Delon, influenced by Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah, so maybe that is the only way that Chinese cinema can be international, like trying to be international.
Well, we've also seen Nouvelle Vague, this, and so there's this sort of cross-pollination of cinemas, and also there was the film yesterday, History of Sound, Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor collecting folk music, and there's this idea that where's this music coming from? Kentucky, but also England. So it's all a big. Did you guys see that?
Yes. Did you see?
Yes. Yeah. I saw it.
What did you think?
Well,
what Tim Roby called Folk Back Mountain.
Yeah, it was very obviously referring to Brokeback Mountain, and I expected so many feelings to flood me, and I was mostly left cold until towards the end. I think something cracked a little bit in me, and I felt the emotional response that I was hoping for, but if only for a tiny bit. I am not sure. I wasn't convinced by Paul Mescal in this role. I think Josh O'Connor really carried the film, especially as a character that is mostly absent from the second part of the film anyway, and he was the one that is more dominant, let's say, not necessarily in the sexual sense of the word, but within that couple he was the more forthcoming one, the more with the initiatives, with the more experience, more connections, whereas Paul Mescal's character was more of the shy, talented boy that is striving for something, but is always coming back and taking a step back every time, like one step forward, two steps back. And I don't know, there was something like quite formulaic about this film, in the structure and the way that it was shot as well. I found the visuals extremely flat. I was looking at these vistas and these conversations, how they were framing both the men together, and I kept thinking, okay, there's no sense of depth in the image, so I'm not sure what that was about. And also there was no desire. I really didn't feel desire. I didn't feel like it was a structural element of that film, and it made me feel like they both these characters have the desire to actualize themselves through music, and they meet through songs, but I didn't feel like they also met as people, as bodies, and the fact that there was, I guess, more attention to the one heterosexual sex scene than to the gay sex also contributed to my understanding of that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the music for the film, it was so based on the music. I thought the music was actually done better in Forever Where Art Thou. They repeated the same songs 2 or 3 times, and they didn't do that essential thing you need to do in this kind of movie of make the audience really rediscover that kind of music and understand it better, which was kind of the whole project. I totally agree with you about Paul Mescal. I mean, he looks so sort of like a lonely dog. And I never believed that the glasses he was wearing had prescription lenses in them. It looked like he just picked them up from the water. And it's ditto with what you say about the landscapes and everything. I could keep feeling like if the camera panned a little bit too far to the left or the right, you would see the catering tent. And, there was nothing that made the landscape feel lived in. Certainly not the rooms or the houses, because everything was too clean.
It's very true.
Everything was too spotless. It was a real. Yeah, it was kind of a disappointment. But I do know a lot of people were moved by it. But even that I found a little bit problematic, a little bit of a throwback. I mean, are we going back to the sort of like the Brokeback Mountain era where we watched gay romance through a lens of melancholy, sort of all the sad gays.
Yeah, and the pain and the regret of not realizing a connection and just remembering it forever. I don't know. Yeah, I felt like that was also robbing me of some sort of immediacy of their connection too.
I'm also a little bit. I always get a little bit irked by a sort of bisexual erasure. He was obviously having sex with women and men, and it's always framed as like, oh, he's not really. He's really someone who's gay, who's just doing this to conform. And it was kind of like, well. Is he? I mean, it just feels a bit weird that isn't more recognised in films. That you're either one or the other. Loads of people are bi.
Yeah.
Why can't we have an expression of that?
Yeah, because in this case, it wouldn't move the plot further. Because it kind of a lot of the plot hinges on the fact that there is the secret and the real life that is elsewhere and the real connection, the real love. And I feel like it served a very perfunctory purpose in this film.
Yeah, exactly.
To not have the characters bi, I mean.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't really. It was a little bit. And Josh O'Connor, of course, is appearing in the next film, which is Mastermind, which is another competition film which we haven't seen yet. It's coming up later this evening. So, final thoughts. I've already nailed my colours, so to speak, to the Mask with Resurrection as my. What I would like to win, not necessarily what I think will win. Probably think Simple Accident, Sound of Falling, all have strong possibilities with this jury.
Yeah.
What do you think, Savina?
I'm thinking Sound of Falling will get something, directorial prize or jury prize. I think it will be recognized in some way, in a big way. But I think for Palme d'Or right now, I could see Sirat winning. I could see a Simple Accident winning if the jury wants to play it safer, quote unquote. But I've heard, I haven't seen The Secret Agent or Resurrection, but these emerge as the most cinephilia Latin movies in the competition, so that could also be an easy choice, I guess. But I would also be pleasantly surprised if Sentimental Value would win, just because it also, as you said, it seems tailor-made for this.
Best actress, perhaps. I mean, that's
again.
But that's
right.
maybe a little bit the problem. I think maybe Jennifer Lawrence for best actress.
I think she would deserve it, truly.
Yeah. I think that was a superb film, but very, very divisive.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it would land with the jury necessarily. Maja, what's your thoughts?
I'm very bad with predictions, so but I think I would hope that actually Sentimental Value would win Palme d'Or. But it's, I don't know, it's just very difficult to predict, and especially I wouldn't see Sira winning, because this film really much felt a little bit like maybe Triangle of Sadness. I mean, it is like Sira is much more interesting when it comes to the film form and what it does with sound. But it has this feeling of apocalypse approaching that these two films do have in common, and I'm not sure if we need that's in the world right now.
That's a great point. But I feel like it's not too smart to bank on any statistics like this, but Oliver Lachey has been successful in winning prizes with all of his films that have shown in Cannes so far. So 3 different sidebars, 3 different prizes. I would be surprised if he doesn't get anything here. I wish I'm wrong, because I don't want the wins to be that predictable. But I stand with you, Maja, on the fact that we need something more hopeful, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. And I do know that I haven't seen it, but I do know Secret Agent was very popular and very entertaining, apparently. One of the ones I regret missing. So if that wins, I'm in trouble, because I won't have seen that.
Me too.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Maja. Thank you so much, Savina.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Beautiful stuff.
That was brilliant. Well done, guys.